Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Maybe yes, maybe no. But anyhow, it's one of the most interesting, intriguing, and fascinating unsolved crimes in American history. Yes, it's unsolved. It is technically still an open case because nobody has been arrested for it. Even though it happened in 1892 and nobody connected to it could possibly still be around, it's an open case. And I had a chance to go visit there because not only do I like going to see, crime scenes and things that I read and study about, I like a good ghost story. And at the Lizzie Borden house, there are plenty of them. While I was there, I spent the night. I spent the night in the room where Abby Borden was murdered, sleeping in a replica of the bed she was making when she was killed. And as I was walking up the stairs, yes, you can look right over your left shoulder, and you could have seen her body laying there. But Lizzie said she didn't notice it, even though she did mention coming down the stairs. I've sat on the couch where Andrew Borden was murdered. I have eaten in the dining room that they used as an autopsy room for Abby's body, while Andrew's body was on the autopsy board in the parlor where he was killed. With the exception, I believe, of the kitchen stove, none of the furniture that is currently in the house is original to that house, but it is, for the most part, original to that period, or it is a reconstruction. About the only thing original from that whole episode is the autopsy board that is hanging on the wall in the dining room. Really unique thing. It's about the size of a stretcher, but it's all cane weaved like a bentwood rocker. For those that are looking to go to have a ghost hunt, to have a talk with Lizzie Borden, you are SOL. Because apparently not only in life, but also in death, Lizzie and her sister hated that house and wanted nothing to do with it. They sold it as soon as they could after the trial was over. They moved up to Maplecroft and they never set foot in there or set eyes on it again. Andrew and Abby, however, will make their appearances known. It was really fascinating being there and going around and looking at all that. It is a bed and breakfast, and so when you are having breakfast, you'll be having them in the dining room, surrounded by all sorts of artifacts and memorabilia and things associated with the trial or with the Borden family or with the murders, including a wonderful china cabinet off to the side that has plaster casts and replicas of the skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden. They do have some of the books that Lizzie Borden used to read and did own. They do have those on display there. One of them is on using edged tools, and then another one they have is When Ghosts Meets Ghosts. They have reproductions of both those books in the gift shop. I bought one, but not the other. I'll let you guess which. But yes, they'll do ghost tours, and while I was there, I found out that the other residents, or guests, if you will, also wanted to go on a ghost tour. So from 10 o'clock until after midnight on the evening of January 13th, we went through the whole house. The third floor where Bridget Sullivan stayed, she was the maid. The private rooms of the Borden family. The first floor, what got really interesting, was going in the basement. One of the places you could see, which happens to be the ceiling of what has become known as the seance room, are all the blood stains that seeped into the floorboards from where Andrew Borden was killed. It stained the wood. You can still see it. Yes, I had all kinds of really neat encounters. Somebody playing with my hair, somebody pulling on one of my toes, somebody giving me a little poke in the back, and then there's the ghost of a cat, Max. He made himself known. He liked playing with those light-up cat balls. But yes, if you ever get a chance to go down to the Borden House, do it. It's a really great place. Fall River is a great town, but it's a really interesting piece of American history. You talk a lot about the police forensic investigation, which was a textbook what not to do. Absolutely no attempt was made to secure a crime scene. The photos that you see of Abby Borden's dead body are staged because the way she fell was in a rather indelicate position, and certain private areas were exposed that they just could not bring themselves to photograph, so they moved the body so that they could adjust her skirts. As far as chivalry goes, really good. As far as forensic crime scene investigation, No. But there was that, and then they talk about some things that I had not read about in most of the accounts, because everybody focuses on Lizzie being guilty because she stood to inherit her father's money. Well, another thing that I always operated under the assumption of, because of the way it is usually depicted and portrayed, is that she was the elder and Emma was the younger. No, Emma was 9 years older than Lizzie. So theoretically, Emma would have been the one to inherit everything, but she was a very quiet, shy, retiring person who didn't like leaving the house, a bit of an agoraphobe. But surprisingly, on that day, she was away visiting family on the seacoast, or friends. That day, Andrew's brother John showed up unannounced and announced he had to stay there. He didn't have any luggage with him. The day of the murder, he and Andrew go off, each taking care of business in Fall River. Then he comes back in the midst of this whole crime scene with neighbors running in and out, cops running in and out, doctors running in and out, a whole big to-do going on. And he just calmly walks by, goes out in the backyard to the pear tree, plucks a pear, leans against the tree, and calmly eats it. He was so composed and non-flustered that one of the cops came over and asked who he was. What was he doing there? And he explained that he was a visitor in the house. He was a guest. When asked to give an account of his whereabouts, he could account for everything except for an hour and a half. He didn't remember where he was. He got lost. Somebody who's been in Fall River for most of his life. But he could remember that he was on a trolley car with 6 Irish Catholic priests, and he gave them the names. He was not Catholic. He was not Irish, and that was a rather poignant bone of contention between he and his brother, because his brother was living in a neighborhood surrounded by Irish Catholics, and in those days, that was looked down upon. So, it's also significant that there was an hour and a half between the murder of Abby Borden and Andrew Borden. And this is significant because, as the tour guide explained, under the way the law was structured in the 1890s, if Andrew died first, all of his money went to Abby, being his surviving spouse. When she died, it would all go to her family, not the girls. However, Abby died first, so Andrew would hang on to all of his money. Then when he died, it would go to his heirs, which were his 2 daughters. Well, after the trial, after everything got settled, Emma and Lizzie split everything down the middle. The maid, Bridget Sullivan, suddenly able to buy a farm. Lizzie and Emma buy a new house in a more fashionable part of town and live there for the rest of their lives, until Emma couldn't be around the actors and performers and people of questionable morals that Lizzie decided she wanted to surround herself with. So she moved to New Hampshire. And as I mentioned before, they were born 9 years apart. They died 9 days apart. So that was quite interesting. And the other thing that I did not know, I knew that the skulls were brought in and presented as evidence at the trial, as an example of the severity and savagery of the hatchet attacks. What I did not know is that they were exhumed without the knowledge or consent of the family. They were dug up, removed from the body, boiled down to remove all flesh and tissue, dried, cleaned, and then brought into the courtroom as a surprise exhibit. When Lizzie saw her father's skull with the hatchet wounds in it, she screamed and fainted. That was what made the jury decide that she did not have the fortitude to be able to commit such an atrocious act. For that, she was acquitted. Now, since we don't know definitively what happened, I'm wondering if one theory that I heard might be correct. Lizzie and Emma were well past marrying age, and they were considered spinsters, late 30s, early 40s. I thought they were much younger. So here's a theory. The uncle, realizing that their father is never going to give them any type of freedom or a life or any financial stability, decides to help them out, maybe at their request, maybe on his own, dispatches father and stepmother. Lizzie and Emma then take off with the money. They reward Bridget. They give nothing to their uncle. Significantly, many years later when he died, he left stuff to all of his relatives with the notable exception of Lizzie and Emma. I offer for your consideration that they asked him to get rid of them, never rewarded him. He in turn decided to disinherit them. They never rewarded him, knowing that he couldn't say anything, because if he did, he would be implicating himself in murder. Possibility? Yes. Provable in court? Probably not. But since it's an open case, an ongoing unsolved murder with no principals or subordinates left alive, it's worth a consideration.